All right, it is great to be here. Today the topic is God-style goals. And that all of you are thinking about resolutions, or maybe you're not. But that's why I wanted to write this today. Well, the other day, my wife and I wrote down some goals for the new year, as well as jotting down the tasks that we're willing to do to reach those goals. And over our 40-year marriage, we've realized that every time we write down our goals, we reach them. And the picture our words convey, they have to be personal, positive, and in the present tense. And that's how God designed us. That's how God designed a human to think and to live. We write down our goals and prayers, and we look at them every day together, my wife and I, and we pray about them together. And we set a time limit for each task. And each day or so, we discuss and hold each other accountable. And this is work for us, and it's work for many millions of others for thousands of years. This is not a new idea on my part. About 2,500 years ago, the prophet Habakkuk was told by God to write the vision, make it plain on the tablets, so he may run who reads it. Habakkuk 2:2. And he must have been a man of action, this Habakkuk guy. And about 150 years prior to Habakkuk, a proverb noted, "The plans of the diligent lead only to plenteous," only to abundance. And I love that. That's Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead only to abundance. How would you like a plan, to have a plan that led you only to abundance? Well, it's possible. The great Apostle Paul spoke about the mindset and energy that it takes to reach any goal. Quote, "I push myself forward toward the goal to win the prize. God has appointed me to win it." That's Philippians 3:14 from the NIRV. You know, Paul took it personally, pictured it vividly, kept it positive, and spoke in present tense. Now, these are all good things, and this is real good stuff. I mean, Paul said he pushed himself toward the prize of that high calling. And, you know, when I upgraded my office, I found one of Josephine and my 20-plus-year-old goal prayer sheets folded and stuck in a book that I seldom use anymore. And it had gotten lost somewhere in a move, days gone by. And half of the goals, needs, or wants, or prayers written on that sheet, you know, had pencil lines drawn through them. And each accomplished task, or each unaccomplished task, didn't. And so I was cleaning out the workspace, so I threw away that sheet because I thought, why have more junk? And a few minutes later, curiosity got the better of me and made me go back into my office, pull it out of the trash, and I had to see what was not crossed off. And I was pleasantly surprised as I read through that list again that every single task that I wrote down, crossed or not, was accomplished and every prayer had been supplied. Way to go, God. Way to go, us. See, all of us know that our super rich Father, who inhabits eternity, has already supplied all of our need. And we're very well aware that the Creator designed each of us to have health and prosperity. We also occasionally grasp the concept that the great supplier of all need exists for us. And He promised us that He will be what we need Him to be. So what do you need? What do you want? You know, He said that He will be it. He will be that supply. He will be what you need Him to be. What do you need? So all He asks us to do is to believe. Simple, right? It's so simple. But I start thinking, if believing was all that simple, then why don't I have everything that I want? And so believing is how we visualize, plan, and carry out our personal God-style goals. So now, master's level believing. Now, I don't want to make this teaching about faith or believing, but I feel the need to explain it a little bit if you're going to grow into your God-style goal list. And it is something that we have to grow into. And believing, sometimes mistakenly called faith, is being so convinced, so persuaded of your ability to receive something that you take ownership of your lack and take repeated action to locate what God has already given you. You're never a victim when you believe. You're never a victim when you believe. Everyone on earth can believe, not just people who call themselves believers. Okay? Everybody's a believer of something. Faith is similar to believing, except that it has nothing to do with our works. It's God's believing in us as we believe in Him. We were given faith. It was free. Faith drives our belief system. It drives our ethics system, our ethic base. Now, speaking of faith, did you know that the word faith is never used in the Old Testament? Never. And if you do see the word faith in your version of the Bible that you carry around with you, you see, it should always be translated faithfulness in the Old Testament, which is really nothing more than the action side of believing, which is really the important side. Once you set a goal, you got to act on it. Okay? So Old Testament people really got that. They understood it. Believing is a mindset. Believing is a plan. It's an activity. It's a set of tiny habits that take us somewhere and get us things. Just like any God-style goal, believing is always personal, present tense, positive, and easy to picture. And it usually takes another person. It's a lot of P's. You see, believing is how God designed us to think and to act so we can receive what He has already placed so close to us that we can feel it. If you write a goal and you can't see it, you can't envision the whole thing, then you're not there. If you can't feel like you already have it, then it's not a true God-style goal. It has to be bigger than that. Here's a quote. I tell you that if anyone should say to this hill, get up and throw yourself into the sea, and without any doubt in his heart believe that what he says will happen, then it will happen. That's why I tell you, whatever you pray about and ask for, believe that ye have received it, and it will be yours. Mark 11:23-24 from the Phillips. See, that said in the, you believe that you have received it. That's what Jesus was trying to teach them. Now we're talking master level believing here. It's not easy to get your mind to that point because you have to go back to think like a child. We all know little girls dressed up like ballerinas. They're not dressed up like ballerinas. If you ask them, what are they going to say? I'm a ballerina. Or a little kid with a fire hat. He's a fireman. Or a police hat. He's a policeman. I don't know why it's all hats for boys, A baseball hat. I'm a professional ball player. You see? So, but you get the picture. Kids got this down. And then we lose it. It gets ripped out of us through life. And Jesus is trying to get people back to that simple mindset, that vision, and the action towards that goal. See, it may take a bit of practice, but we too can actually believe to reach any and every single goal. So, let's get started. So keep God in your goal setting. Now, every time I begin to get a little too serious about my goals, and I start telling my wife, I need to push a little harder, hon. I need to work a little longer. I need to go in earlier. I need to stay later. I need to make more phone calls. She always tells me to be sure I keep God in my plans. And it sort of makes me mad. But then it sort of doesn't. And You know, and so, she reminds me that God has supplied our need, and He has done it through the 27 moves in the first 30 years of our marriage. You see, things may have gotten tight at times, but we never lacked. We never went without, not one single time. There was times we moved into a city with the U-Haul that we paid for, and we didn't have a place to stay, we didn't know anybody, and I didn't have a job. Then I had to start over right then, and there's no messing around. You unload the truck, she unpacks it, and I go out and start bidding. And I would just do concentric circles and I'd just go until I got work, and then I would work. And then I'd find another job and another job and another job and keep doing it until I had enough money. And it always came to pass. You know, one of Josephine's favorite verses, probably because she's married to me, is 1 Corinthians 10:13. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. 1 Corinthians 10:13. You know, and see, God's faithful. God's faithful. And if we're faithful, man, that's a pretty good team, isn't it? You see, there's always a way out of any mess. There's always a way out of any mess that we get ourselves into. Just keep God in your plans. Keep God in your plans. Quote, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37:4. Now, isn't that what we all want? Isn't that what we all want? To have the desires of our hearts? Just think of one right now. What's your top desire? Is it health? Is it love? Is it money? You know, what is it? A vacation? You know, retiring? You know, what is it? That's what we all want, the desires of our heart. And He said, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Well, to delight yourself in the Lord is just, we would say, doing the Word. But how many of those things in the Word are they're promises for us? Think about it. That's just as much revelation as if God told it to a prophet and he or she spoke it out, right? You know, so here's another one. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. Do you know God has plans for you? Imagine if your plans fit with His plans. I mean, really, logically, how could we lose? It's impossible to fail if we really believe that. You know, God has our desires, our hopes, our future in His plans. Now that sounds amazing to me. You know, quote, but you take courage and do not let your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded. 2 Chronicles 15:7. Take courage. Don't let your hands be weak, for your work will be rewarded. I love that. You take courage. You don't allow yourself to be weak, and our work will be rewarded. How would you like to be rewarded for your work? You ever thought that you weren't? We all have. I'm doing all this work and I get no notoriety. My boss doesn't see what I'm doing. Nobody notices. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Remember I said, when you believe you're never a victim? It's impossible. They don't fit. It's oil and water. They can't mix. You'll never be a victim if you believe, because you've taken ownership of your own life. You're never a victim when you believe, because you've taken ownership of your own failures and your own situations, our own messes. Then you figure a way to get out of that. And God will show you that way. He's made that way. He has you in His plans. But we know that for Here's another quote. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to His purpose. Romans 8:28. All things work together for good to them that are called according to His purpose. Imagine if all things are working, in the whole universe is just working so that you can have good things. That's the thought. But the world teaches you no. Your subconscious tells you, it never worked for you last year. Why will it work this year? You see, you love God, which means that the entire universe works together as one great big system. The whole creation works in concert to make things turn out profitable for you. Who could ask more than that? When you think your need or your goal is too big, too hard, too much to ask for, then go back and read some of these promises. Gosh, there's a whole bunch more. There wasn't time to put all the things down. I cut out so many, it wasn't worth it. You see, I guess it was worth it. And then we'll get done with this thing. You see, God made you a promise that He will call on the entire universe to supply your need. God will call on the entire universe to supply your need. That's a pretty big claim. See, so like my wife reminds me, keep God in your goal setting. That's the first step. For us. Maybe not for others. For us, I think that's the very first step. Because we are people with the Spirit of God. And most Christians have no clue what that's supposed to do. What is the advantage of being born again? I just had a Christian ask me that anyway. What's the advantage of having the Spirit of God? What's the point? Because we all sort of live the same kind of house, same kind of car, same kind of bicycle, same kind of haircut. What's the advantage? Well, there has to be one, right? Well, the advantage is to help you find your abundance, help you find your answers. It can guide you to things that the enemy wants to hide from you. It has to be big. If Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil are to keep you from being blessed. You know, to keep you from having all that God wants you to have, to steal, kill, and destroy, right? And so the Spirit of God, it's huge. So this teaching is for people with the Spirit of God. Not even people who have to know how to use it all that particularly well. Just somebody who has the Spirit of God, because you're going to get it. The Spirit of God will guide you. Like Jesus Christ guided His 12 apostles, the Spirit of God is also called the Comforter, and He will guide you into unbelievable places. So the actions that we need to take. Now, spoiler alert, even though God promised to supply all our need, He still requires us to do a few things to complete the receiving process. You see, there's certain things that we must think and that we must do and we must want if we want to achieve our God-style goals. There's hundreds of verses that tell us the actions we need to take in order to locate the abundance that God has worked so hard and so long to supply to us. Let's look at a few. Quote, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward calling of God in Christ Jesus. Philippians 3:14. I press toward the goal. Well, to press on. I press on toward the goal. To press on means to pursue like a wolf tracking an elk. It means it's like an entrepreneur tracking down a lead. It's like a teen stalking a refrigerator, walking past it a couple of times, looking around. Nothing's going to stop them. Nothing's going to stop them. You see, that's press. That's what the word pressing means. It means to pursue. It's like a young man pursuing a girl or a young girl pursuing a young man. It's a pursuit. You see, quote, prepare your work outside. Get everything ready for yourself in the field. And after that, build your house. Proverbs 24:27. Prepare your work, get everything ready, now go build it. Now that sort of reminds me of another verse, which we'll get to in a second, but you acquire the funding, you draw up the plans, you buy the lot and the supplies, you hire the contractors, you get started on your home. Whatever it is, you picture it, you prepare it in detail to the best of your ability, and then you go and build. If you couldn't picture your house, then what are you building? I mean, even every builder has a set of plans, right? That's nothing more than a set of pictures, right? They know exactly what they're building. That's exactly how you plan. That's still godly goal setting. How detailed do you want to be? I guarantee an architect can picture that full building in his mind, every detail of it after it's built, before it's even on paper, or as he's putting it on paper. Every good meeting I ever ran, I could picture the whole meeting from beginning to end, from setup through to cleanup, in my mind. And they always went according to that plan. When I could envision it where that was what was going to happen, then I would make that happen. And it always did, and they were always fun. You see? So let me see, here's another one here. Quote, "So don't follow me without considering what it'll cost you. For who would construct a house before first sitting down and estimating the cost to complete it?" Luke 14:28 from the TPT. Never heard that one before, right? The TPT. You see, count the cost. What's it going to cost you to retire early? What's it going to cost you to retire late? What's it going to cost you to make 10 more sales calls a day? What's it going to cost you to not make any sales calls a day? Life planning is really varying levels of cost analysis. Any business does a cost analysis. If I do this, it's going to cost this. If I sell that, I'm going to get this. It's cost analysis. Quote, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." Proverbs 21:5 from the ESV. You see, if our planning is diligent, if we can easily picture them clearly, we keep our plans positive and in the present tense, and we take them very, very personally, we will not fail. Have you taken full ownership of your goals? Or is this something you wrote down because you're supposed to do it for work? Or because your spouse told you should? You see, be diligent. Now the word hasty there, I always thought hasty meant like rushing through things. And that's not good either. Sometimes you need to rush, but that's not what this means. It doesn't mean here it doesn't mean moving too quickly. Hasty actions that end in poverty really means to think small. Now, nobody's going to write a book called The Magic of Thinking Small. The magic of thinking small. You see, thinking small is to act without a clear picture. You haven't really thought it all through. You ever had an employee or something do that? They just didn't think it through and then they messed something up. You see, we've all had that happen. Or maybe we were that employee. I was at times. I know what to do. I don't need to look at those silly plans. Oops. How come I have these bolts left over? Oh. See, there's no magic of thinking small. Thinking small, being hasty, thinking small, is taking no personal ownership. You're just going through the motions. And you've seen employees do that, right? They just go through the motions. There's no believing there. They're just going through the motions. You might have seen it on teams. When they lose heart, then they're just going through the motions. And they're not really believing anymore. You'll always take ownership for your actions when you believe. To move out of fear and not positive believing action is that hasty. That's what that means. So hasty is the energy it takes to live someone else's dream because we don't want to put in the time to build our own. That's hasty. Enough on that. So now, write, repeat, run. You know, I want to close this part of the teaching with a section of scripture that I've heard mentioned in many, many business books lately. Surprisingly, many. And some of the writers probably don't even know that it's a biblical thing. Where it talks about write the vision, make it clear, and run with it. Because it's so cool. And that was 2,500 years old, that thing. Write it down, make it clear, and now run with it. Pretty cool. And this phrase may have come from, it did come from God speaking to an ancient prophet, like I said, 2,500 years ago. But it's just as true, just as necessary, just as impactful today. It works. Why are the self-help guys using it now and the business coaches? Because it's true. It works. It's simple. Goal setting can become very complex, or it can be very simple. And now I'm going to read Habakkuk 2:2-3. And the Lord answered me, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. For still the vision awaits its appointed time. It hastens to the end. It will not lie. And if it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Habakkuk 2:2-3. See, write down what God promised you. Etch it deeply into your heart and then run with it. Now here's a concept. You ever heard that God works in you to will and to do of His good pleasure? That means if you have a goal, it's probably a goal that God has put onto your heart. Just think about it. If God works in you to will and to do of His own good pleasure, then I'll bet the things that you really want in your life is something that God wants you to have. It's part of His plan for you. So why would we not want that? Why would we not head that direction? Well, fear. We get tricked. We get distracted. You see, whatever. So I'm going to break down this verse a little bit, and I think it's really going to bless you. So write down your vision. That's the first thing. In Habakkuk, it's speaking of specific revelation to help him help God's people. Now, look at it this way. Hasn't God promised you many things in writing in the Word of God, like I said earlier? Is it any less revelation than what old Habakkuk received? It can't be. If God said that you have prosperity and health, then do you? Yeah. Now, if we don't have it, is it God's fault? It can't be. Did God promise He'll supply all your need according to His riches and glory? Isn't that in writing? That's as true today as it was 2,000 years ago. Think about it. God promises to supply all your need. What is your need? Well, only you know that. Don't think your need is what somebody else says your need is. Then you're living somebody else's goal and there's no believing behind it. What do you need? You write it down and I guarantee then God goes into action. Write down your goal. Write down your vision. You see, now a side note, even the name Habakkuk means to acquire or to embrace. Even his name meant that. You see, this boy knew how to receive. This boy named Habakkuk. And he lived during some of the darkest days of Israel. It's right before they got dragged into Babylon. It was a horrible time. People had forgotten about God. They didn't care anymore. And there was 4 prophets that were active at that time. It was so important to get Israel back on track because the Christ had to be born, right? There was 4 guys. This was a time when Israel was taken captive and the people we're losing or had already lost hope in God and in their future. Imagine a life with no hope. You know, they were not seeing God working like they'd seen in the past, but they put the blame on God and not on themselves. I'm sure none of you have ever done that, but I have asked God before, come on, what's wrong, man? What's taking so long? You know, how come I'm not healed? How come I'm not prospering? How come? You know, and I'm blaming God. I know none of you have done that, but I must confess, I have a time or two. You see, and I do have regrets, unlike Sinatra. They blamed God, not themselves. They had no vision, they took no ownership, and they were negative and looked only to the glory days of the past. If you keep saying, oh, I remember when I used to see God work so big in my life, and all you're doing is bragging about the past, I'm telling you, you're not living your own dream anymore. It's time, when you hear yourself doing that, stop and write some new goals. Because if you're not seeing God work in your life now, and you're more mature, and you're a better person now than you were, something is wrong. Something is wrong. And I guarantee it's an ownership problem. You see, we're blaming somebody else. You know, there's something powerful about writing things down that cannot be duplicated digitally. And a lot of these business coaches, they'll say, write your goals down by hand. You can use your phones if you want. Maybe the kids are okay with that. But most of us who actually had a pencil and a Big Chief tablet, you know, you need to write that stuff. You see? Now here's a cool one. Now I'm just saying there's something that, because you're doing something with your hands. Now maybe it works as good digitally now for kids. I don't know. For me, it works better writing them down. And you can change them easy. And you can see lines scratched through and this and that, and arrows pointing to other things, and moving one to the top and moving one down. And I mean, it's sort of cool. You see? So now the second part of that verse is, make it plain on tablets. Now this isn't saying the same thing again. You know, write it down isn't the same thing as making it plain. Now, I do not have good handwriting. And most of you who've received letters from me and my wife cannot tell the difference between our handwriting. What it means is we're both sloppy. We're both equally bad at penmanship. Okay, we even can't read our own writing. I'll send her an anniversary card and she'll say, now what does this say? I don't know, I thought you could read it. No, I'm just kidding. So this means, to make it plain means to go over each word repeatedly with a stylus so that each word and phrase is crystal clear. Now I'll explain this. This repetition would etch the words into the tablet and also into the heart of the writer. You see? So for the words to be flawless, it would take pressure and at times repetition on each and every letter, each and every word to make it legible and undeniable. So that's what it means to make it plain. Now this is how you set your goals too. Write them down and make them so clear that you know exactly what you're talking about. Don't just write your goal down. You write it and you rewrite it, and next day you rewrite it, the next day you rewrite it, the next day you rewrite it, the next day you rewrite it, until it's just so ingrained in your heart. You know they're there. A lot of business coaches, they'll take a spiral notebook or a pad or a binder, and they'll write down their goals every day. And then the next day, they won't look at the previous day, and they'll write them down again. And every day, they'll do this every single day, write down all their goals. And after a while, some of them start dropping off. You know why? They got reached. But it's so ingrained in them. It's so ingrained in them if you just write it down every day. Now, me and Josephine, we didn't write them down every day, but we prayed about them every day. We looked at them every day, and we would scratch through them as we got through them if it happened every day. You see? So I'm not saying which is better. I'm not going to tell you today one technique of goal setting that works, because there's thousands of them. And I looked at so many that I really wanted to teach today. You see, but then I realized, don't do it. Because then people are going to think that's the way. There isn't a way. My way is a piece of paper and a pencil. Other people use a pen. Some people use a cell phone. I don't care. There's probably 1,000 apps on goal setting. I don't care. If you're going to use it 1,000 days in a row, then it's good. If you can use it for one day, it's not so good. Or I just heard recently, it's better to do one thing 1,000 times than 1,000 times 1,000 things one time. You know, do it over and over and over and over and over. That's what that's talking about. Now, the final part of this, so that he may run who reads it. You know, there are two reasons to run in that day and time. Just two: fight or flight. You see, Israel didn't have sports. They didn't do sports. It wasn't like that. It's fight or flight. You know, we may run away from danger, or you may run toward danger. Right? People in the military, cops, different people, they run toward the problem. Firemen, they run toward the problem. Nurses, doctors, they run toward it. Whereas a lot of people run away from stuff. You see? Maybe for good reason. You see? In the days before cell phones, a messenger would read the meticulously engraved tablet until he or she memorized it. They didn't take it. They had to memorize it. And then they would run as fast as they could to communicate it clearly and exactly. And then the hearers would then run to help. Then the people who heard them would run to hide or run to help somebody else. Sometimes a messenger would come through, danger, get out of town, hide. Well, then people, if they listened, they were safe. So I love verse 3, quote, if it seems slow, and we're talking about God's answer. If it seems slow, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. And we all feel this way at times. Why is it taking so long? God says, wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. And then bam, here it is. I got it. Right on time. The old quote says, God's seldom early, but he's never late. You ever heard that? You see, God's always right on time. As long as we put in the time. We still have to do something. That's the whole point of this. You know, you write it, you repeat it, you run with it, you wait for it, and you receive it. Write, repeat, run, wait, receive. You see, now a few tips on God-style goal setting. I'm not going to say much about this, but you know, I know it's very Zen to live in the now. And I know that all of you Zen masters out there are looking for ways to make your now a little bit more pleasurable. You know, and it usually takes a little bit of planning and some after-school homework to get followers on your YouTube channel, or your likes on Facebook, or for people to buy your book. But speaking of Zen, didn't Mike Tyson say, everybody mouth? Yeah. There's always going to be something that's going to try to knock you off your path, right? Your goal path. But there's only a few things that help you stay on task, and that's the whole point of this teaching. What will help you stay on task? If you lose your job, then it quickly jumps to the top, doesn't it? See, goals are concrete, yet they're liquid. And they must be hard enough to be unbending, yet flexible enough to be updated with a pencil. I mean, a goal is solid. I'm never changing. I'm going for it. Nothing's going to stop me except a pencil. Because it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it, right? You see, goals will morph and change depending upon need. And that's why you want to write them every day. You want to have some fluid set of goals that you can work through. I suggest not doing goals for a year. Don't do year-long goal setting. Break it down into a smaller chunk. You know, I'm reading a book right now called The 12-Week Year. The 12-week year, and it's about setting goals in 12-week blocks. You see? Because, I mean, they say if you can get a habit in 21 days or 30 days or 66 days, well, I'll give you 90 days. Okay? And if you can 100%, and if you have the, well, I'll explain this in a second. I'm jumping ahead of myself. We ask ourselves, you have to ask yourself, is it really your dream? Is it really your goal? Living your dream, I guarantee you're living somebody else's. You're helping somebody else live their dream. You see? See, it's much easier to stay faithful to a personal goal than one that belongs to someone else. So you have to figure a way, if you work for somebody, how do you make it your dream too? What are you getting out of that job? Do you get a paycheck? That's a pretty good thing, to get a paycheck every week. If you're an entrepreneur, you don't. You don't make your calls. You don't. Continuing with the goal system is when I adopted a goal-setting plan that was not my own style and was complex. Goals, SMART goals, or dumb goals, or goal pyramids, or long-term, short month. Now, all those will work for somebody, but they don't work for me. I've tried many things that didn't work, and I finally realized what works for me is just writing a simple pencil and list, and then changing it as necessary. Maybe you need a, everybody's different. That's why I didn't want to make a plan for you. Well, I don't want to do that. Find your own plan, or just get out a pencil and a piece of paper. Get a spiral notebook and write down every day, you know, your top 10 goals. You see, and the next day write them again. You know, and you're going to start crossing things out. It's smart. They work. It's good. They work for hundreds of thousands of people. You see, I'm not saying they're bad. If you're at work, you got to do what your boss tells you. Make it a habit. If your goals are not a habit, if you can't picture them, if you haven't taken full ownership of them, then it's not really a goal. It's just a wish. You see, you know, it's just like goal achievement is like a diet. And any system will work if you'll just work at it faithfully, don't cheat, and you don't give up. For most people. Maybe not everybody, you know, but you get my point. You get my point. Like if you show up to work every day and you actually work and you're faithful, you're probably going to get a paycheck. But if you don't show up to work every day, you're probably going to get fired. Right? Yeah. Well, don't get fired from your own goals. Show up every day. There are thousands of books, seminars, templates, and they're all good, but they're not all going to work for you. Keep it simple, however simple you need. Simple to you might be complex. You might need a 15-point plan, and I saw those. It's like, I can hardly even read it without my eyes rolling back in my head. You know, some of these things. But to other people, they're like salivating. This is just what I needed. You read the comments. This helped me. It changed my life. I made $1 million. Well, good. You see? You know, my wife and I just write down on a piece of paper our goal, and we read them out loud together and pray about them every day, and we always get what we want. Simple. You see? We scratch through when it's accomplished or when God supplied, and it's super simple. It works for us, but it may not work for you. You may need something more simple. I don't know how. You know? It's hard. You can't get much more basic than a piece of paper and a pencil, you see. But maybe there is a way. I don't know. You see, oh, there is a way. A vision board, right? Now, some people, they don't think in words. They think more in pictures. And so they go in, they want to lose weight, they picture somebody with a body like they want, and they cut it out of a magazine, and then get a little thing of their head, and they put it on there, and they put their head on a cruise boat, you know, and they're hanging over the edge with all the friends that they want to take, and then they do that, and they make this vision board, or this picture board, and that's okay too. That's still goal setting. You look at that every day, pretty soon you can picture yourself on the boat. or in that body. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Maybe you do more than one thing. But one thing, you know, what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to have like 3 goals or 5. I'm not going to have any more than that. Because that's what I've been doing the last few years. I decide I'm going to change 1 or 2 things. Like start running every day, or I'm going to read every day, or whatever. And I made that a habit after a few months. I don't have to think about it. I went gluten-free. I don't have to think about it. I'm gluten-free. I don't need to be, but I am. Why? Help me maintain my weight through the holidays. That's the only reason I did it. But then my plantar fasciitis disappeared. Who knew? Who knew it caused inflammation in me? I don't know about you. Maybe it works better, helps you. You know, the point is I change different things, but I'm going to write down like 3 to 5 things. Personal, financial, health, you know, whatever. And then I'm going to only have 2 or 3 little bullet points under there, which are my tasks. And when you write a goal, write it in the present tense. It's not like, I don't want to be fat anymore. Well, that's not a goal. That's not a goal. I'm so sick of being fat. I hate being fat. You see, you don't do that. You see, or I'm tired of being broke. I'm not going to be broke by August. That's not a goal. It's I will earn $100,000 by August. Or just write $100,000 by August. Now, what am I going to do to make that happen? I'm going to make 20 sales calls a day. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to write my thank you note. You know, just 2 or 3 things. And health. If nothing's been working, then we're doing something wrong. You see, there's something that ain't fitting. So there has to be a way. And so this is why you can change it. If in 12 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever period of time you choose, you know, you haven't reached that, then revamp it and change it. And stick with it and grade yourself every day. Did I do it? Have a calendar. 1, 2, you know, oh shoot, I got to cut this off here. So enough on that. I think you get the point. But have a calendar, have 2 or 3 goals, something like that. Have a couple of tasks under that. Keep it real simple this year.